absolute gods of yacht design. Very spacious indeed, really good visibility, but I've really been looking forward to showing you this. Just look at this, it is truly epic. Few yachts in the world have made headlines like ALFA NERO. She was in the world's press when she was launched, she was in the world's press when she was sold, and now that she's available for sale again, everybody is talking about her. I actually filmed ALFA NERO late last year for a promotional charter video in Antigua. She'd literally just come out of a big refit, so not even all of the tenders and toys were on board. It made for quite a challenging shoot. Well, now they're preparing her for the Monaco Yacht Show, where she will be presented for sale, and the purpose of this video is to take you all the way through her from the top deck all the way to the tank deck, just as if you were with me at the yacht show. As I toured the yacht with the crew in preparation of this video, I quickly realised that she is a vessel with two distinct sides: what you can see and what you can't. So, as we look at the yacht deck by deck, we'll be looking at both of those aspects, starting right at the top, which is the bridge deck. Well, that's pretty much it as far as this deck is concerned. This is, after all, the smallest deck on the yacht. But what I want to do is show you more details that you would actually see if you were at a boat show touring ALFA NERO. For example, what you may not know is that through here, there's a whole separate cabin area. It's a small cabin and it's really designed for staff. So for example, if you travel with a bodyguard or with a nanny for the children, occasionally some clients will even have a doctor that they have along with them for their trip. That is a great cabin. Now that cabin uses this area as their bathroom, and this is really doubles up both for use for the person using that cabin and also for the gym. There's a big shower in there, obviously there's the toilet, there's a sink, so it's a double use area. I suspect that generally speaking that cabin won't be used, but it's really good to have it if you do need it. Guest access, as you've seen, is through that door that I've just come through, but crew access is through here. It's a very nautical thing that crew areas to be on the port side of a yacht. I was talking to the crew about it earlier. Nobody knows why that is. If you know why, leave a comment below. But on this area here for the crew, we have a small butler's pantry there. It's very handy if one of the crew in the bridge just wants to go and get a coffee, biscuits or something. That's a really handy area to have. We have the crew staircase here. And then of course we get to the bridge, which is very spacious indeed. I spent quite a bit of the day actually sitting there making notes for this video, and there was the purser was up here, the chief officer, the second officer, lots of space for everybody to work. In fact, they're back there in their own dedicated office right now. So it's a real good practical working area with the captain's cabin just through there as well. And it's a sizable, decent cabin. I mean, this is a yacht where people are going to spend a long time on board, and therefore the crew will spend long times on board. So it's important that the crew are comfortable. And on ALFA NERO, I have to take my hats off to the designers, Nuvolari Lenard and the shipyard, Oceanco, who've made a very sizable, spacious, practical yacht with a good layout. Talking about things that you wouldn't immediately see on a yacht video. And to be fair, you may have seen this on other yacht videos, but on either side of the yacht, underneath here there are wing stations, and obviously the larger yachts really do need to have these so that whoever on the crew is maneuvering the yacht in the marina has really good visibility. And then together with their VHF radios, they're talking about how close they are to the dock. But what I really wanted to show you, because it's a very interesting thing, is the life rafts here. Now, when you build a large yacht or any yacht to a certain classification, the life rafts have to be able to float free if there's a real emergency, and they have hydrostatic releases that allow them to just float free, as I say, in an extreme emergency. But what happens if the hydrostatic releases don't work? Well, follow me. I've never seen this before. I'm not saying it's not on other yachts, but it's not something I've seen before. Underneath here, these are pumps that you can pump up and down, and they actually snap the cords that are holding the life rafts. So if you're in a real emergency, you're waiting for the life rafts to be released and to float away. It doesn't happen. One of the crew will come here, pump, 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 and it releases the life rafts. And as I went through the yacht and I was speaking to the crew, I realized that a lot of the design of ALFA NERO is about the safety, about redundancy systems, about what happens if something doesn't go the way it's supposed to happen. Yes, it's an incredibly beautiful yacht, but it's an incredibly safe one too. So once again, the things that meet the eye are astonishingly beautiful on the yacht, but what about the things that don't immediately become obvious to us? Well, let me start by telling you something about the owner's cabin itself, where almost all of the soft furnishings are silk. Silk in the carpets, this beautiful silk armchair, silk curtains, and you can feel it. I mean, some things you can see are beautiful, but let me tell you, the actual touch of it to the feet is absolutely beautiful. You notice as well that the television set has this curved shape to the back of it. That's because the whole thing will swivel. If you want to watch the television from the armchair, you can turn it around. If you want to watch television from the sofa here, again, it will turn around in the direction of the sofa. And I can imagine if you're watching the television from the sofa and you want to get a little bit of fresh air, then you can exit the yacht through this door and you have your own private foredeck with a jacuzzi tub, a little table, a sofa. I actually said to the crew that I can imagine people will use that for breakfast in the mornings, but they said it's happened, but more generally, people on board the yacht are using that area in the evening for cocktails to just unwind at the end of a long, happy day before they go to bed. I should mention as well, that's a completely private area in the sense that it's not overlooked from the bridge. You can't see it from the bridge. And if you go to the foredeck, which we'll do in a moment, you can't see it from the foredeck either. So you have total privacy. You will have seen as well this area here, which is essentially the owner's study, and wonderful area to be able to work from. More and more people now include yachting as a part of their lifestyle, and it's important for them to be able to work on board. But it's more than just that. The sofa there becomes a bed, so that if you have a family with young children who don't want to sleep too far away from the parents, you can use it for that. All of this then becomes wardrobe space. Actually, I'm hearing of more and more couples, particularly as they get on in age, that have a snore room. If one of the partners snores, they'll use this as the snore room so that they can both get a good night's sleep. It might sound like a funny thing to say, but it's the absolute truth. I've heard of many couples that do that. And the whole area as well closes off, so it becomes an independent part of the yacht. Through here though, we have a huge walk-in closet. All of this is closet space. Closet space. Down here, more closet space. There's even a little recess here for, I guess, very nice handbags and shoes. So it's kind of a showcase for that. But the reason I wanted to show it to you is because there's another entrance to the area here. And that's a good practical idea, because if one person is sleeping or working and they don't want to be disturbed, the other person at least can enter and exit from the cabin through this door. Let me show you what the other side of the door is. And when you do exit that particular door, you can either go left to the starboard side, which is the guest area of the yacht, or you can turn right to the port side, which is the crew area. Now, just as with the bridge deck, this deck too has a butler's pantry, this time a little bit bigger than the one above. And there's a good reason why these decks should have a butler's pantry. That's really a service issue, that if you have an area where you can prepare cocktails, drinks, a few snacks for the guests that are on that deck at the time, the service is so much quicker and more efficient. And to make it quicker and more efficient, there's even a service elevator that goes all the way down to the tank deck. When we look at the tank deck, you'll understand why the service elevator goes as far as that deck. You've seen the Sky Lounge already, you know it's beautiful, but I'm here to show you things that are not so immediately evident. Such as, for example, above me here, there's a projector screen and a projector in a panel in the ceiling over there, so that you can have a little inside home cinema. Now, when I saw that, I said to the crew, why do you have that when there's already a big television here? And they said, are you kidding? Kids love this. They said they turn the lights out, they have their own little cinema, they sit there eating popcorn and watching whatever it is that they watch, Frozen. And it's just an extra feature to the yachts that just makes people more happy when they're on board, as does the dining area. Now, I'm told that this is the area that most guests enjoy eating at most of the time. And I really do understand why. I mean, not only is it a beautiful area to eat in, but also these large curved windows completely open up so that you can be protected from the elements, but at the same time feel like you're eating al fresco. I mentioned that to the crew, who, by the way, was so helpful when I was making notes on this video, because they said to me, that's true that you have protection from the wind, but additionally the yacht has what's called a DPS, which is a dynamic positioning system. So you may notice when you look at yachts in a bay, they all end up facing the same way, and that's because of the wind essentially pushes them all into the same direction. But with a DPS system, automatically the bow thruster and the stern thruster make little corrections so that the captain can point the nose of the yacht into the wind, and the DPS keeps it in that position so that while the guests are eating, they're fully protected from the wind and the elements. How cool is that? There's some other features though on this deck that you wouldn't see in most promotional videos that I want to show you, and they're outside on the aft deck. Again, clearly a beautiful area up here, but what I wanted to show you is more of a technical thing, which is that behind this door there's an emergency generator room. Now, the yacht has 3 other generators, so it's highly unlikely that all 3 generators are not going to work. But if that does happen, you fire up this generator and at least you've got power to the yacht. But it doesn't end there, because behind this door there is a high fog manual release for the emergency generator room. What does that mean? The yacht has a high fog anti-incendiary system on board, which basically when a fire does break out, or if a fire does break out, it releases a high fog which will put the fire out in that location. It doesn't flood the entire yacht and damage everything. It just puts the fire out in that location. Now in the emergency generator room, if that system doesn't work, the crew know to come here and they can manually release that high fog system. Again, it's not just about the beauty of the yacht, it's about the design and the safety on board. One thing I will say about the beauty though is over here. How cool is this? If you're the owner or a guest on board and you're sitting down here with your partner having a nice chat, from here you can easily see your kids playing in the swimming pool. You can even see what's going on down here through this glass panel. Again, it's about beauty of design and about being on a very safe yacht. made notes to the editor of this video saying that for this deck I wanted epic imagery and epic music, because in my opinion the main deck of ALFA NERO is one of the most epic main decks of any yacht in the world, from the swimming pool all the way through to the VIP stateroom. But obviously I'm here to show you things which are less visible. For example, behind here we have storage for toiletries, which by the way is very, very useful, because I remember I was a guest once on a yacht very similar to this, and I'd forgotten my contact lens solution. These were in the days before I was using daily contact lenses. And quick as a flash, the chief stewardess went to a cupboard exactly like that and came out with some contact lens solution. It blew me away, but that is the kind of service that you can offer if you have a well-trained crew, a beautiful yacht, and well-stocked areas. Here on the other hand, this is a bigger storage area, and that's where the bigger items go. Toilet rolls, which take up so much space, bottled water and such like. Again, it's a handy thing to have so close to the cabins for obvious reasons. And before I show you the crew area on this deck, I'd like you to just take a look at the dining area that you've already seen, and particularly look at the view out there. Now remember the view, put a pin in it in your mind, because we're going to come back to it later. First, let's take a look at the crew area here. As you probably guessed, we have a butler's pantry again. This time the crew tell me this is the one that's used the most. This tends to be the area where a lot of the prep is done. And then if someone wants, I don't know, a cappuccino, a few biscuits, they'll get it done down here and it gets distributed from here. But the very interesting part that I found on this deck was actually behind here. I mean, you can see that this is an area where people check in and off the boat. It's essential on a large yacht, you know who's off and who's actually on. And this is kind of a critical area of the yacht because it's the main area where crew will enter or exit the vessel. So right by that door, they've put what they call an SOS room. And here you can close off watertight doors, open watertight doors, you can shut down systems. So again, if there's a real emergency going on, which one hopes will not happen, but you have to always plan for. If there's a real emergency, the crew are going to be in and out from there, dealing with the emergency. Somebody can immediately shut systems down if that's necessary. It's a really well thought out design. Again, we have the service elevator here, a little food prep area, but I've really been looking forward to showing you this, the piano. You've probably seen pianos before on yachts, but you won't have seen one exactly like this, I can guarantee you. This was built by Pleyel of Paris. The model is an MDR. It was made in 2006, and it's one of a limited edition of 8 pianos. But the uniqueness of this object doesn't end there. They wanted to have this unique design on board which blends beautifully with the rest of the decor of the yacht, and so they commissioned an artist, Marco Del Rey, to hand engrave this, the legs, the stool, to make a truly unique piece of art that blends so beautifully with the rest of the yacht. But that's not even the best thing. The thing I've most been looking forward to showing you, which is the absolute finest part of the entire yacht, of course, is through here. What can I even say about the aft deck on ALFA NERO? Apart from Nuvolari Lenard are geniuses of yacht design, I would challenge anybody to find a more superb aft deck on any yacht of any size than ALFA NERO. It is truly epic. But again, I'm here to show you the things which are less evident. For example, did you know that through this door, which I thought when I first saw it might be access to the engine room, but no. It's actually a sauna. Another thing I had no idea about until one of the crew showed me was this grille, which you might think is something to do with the engine room, nothing to do with the engine room at all. It's actually a barbecue area, and again, the crew were telling me that they put down a little bit of protection here for any grease or fat that splashes up, and they've had some wonderful barbecues in this area. This is a lifting, lowering and rotating television set, but it would be absolutely a crime on my part not to also talk about the swimming pool. The first infinity pool ever on a super yacht. Right now it's in the position as a helicopter touch and go landing pad, but actually this is a variable depth pool. So you can, in other words, lower it all the way down so you have the full depth of the pool. You can lift it to the height that you desire to make a paddling pool for the children. You can have it all the way up and use it as a dance floor. And I'm told by the crew they have had some incredible parties on board, so much so that they also added these speakers so they can really pump up the volume and have a great time. Can you imagine being an anchor with 20, 30 of your friends, the music playing? It must be incredible. Let's look at the side decks too though, because there's some very cool features down there too. The first thing to note on both side decks is that they have wind-breaking doors. And actually we're in Greece at the moment and the wind has really picked up this afternoon, so that's quite a handy thing to be able to just close off to give people a bit of protection from the wind on that beautiful aft deck. The reason I'm walking backwards actually is because the wind noise was so bad otherwise. Here we have the emergency escape from the engine room. You'll see the engine room later and you'll see a ladder that goes all the way up from the tank deck through the lower deck up to this deck, so that if the crew need to, they can get right up that ladder out here and get to safety. And this is what's called the fire locker. It's essentially firefighting equipment, but there's also medical equipment. There's even a stretcher in there as well. And actually, even though I haven't shown you all of them, there's a lot of fire hydrants, firefighting equipment dotted throughout the yacht in strategic locations. You'll remember as well that the main crew entrance was up this deck on this side so that the crew can come out. One guy will be closing down systems if there is an emergency, another will go to that locker, get out whatever's needed to treat it. Here covered up is a manual sideboarding ladder. Now on the other side of the yacht there's an automatic one that's fitted into the bulwark and that will come out and lower. And as we were walking along earlier with the crew, I noticed this gate and I said, what could this gate possibly be for? It's there for a good reason, because all of this bulwark lowers down both on this side and on the starboard side of the yacht. And you'll remember that I said stick a pin in that image from the dining room earlier. I remember the view, put a pin in it in your mind, because we're going to come back to it later. Well, this is the image that you get. When this is lowered down, you have this glorious view of the ocean uninterrupted from the bulwark. As you can imagine, there's another gate just here. But it doesn't end there. This is a beautiful aesthetic feature of the yacht. And I noticed that in certain areas there's pistons, and that's because these two will lower down. Now, again, talking to the crew, we were saying, why does it do that? And in all honesty, neither I nor the crew really knew 100% why they open up, but we have two theories. One is that since this corresponds with the guest accommodation, it also gives the guests a nicer uninterrupted view. But the other one is that the second officer was saying that when they're cleaning the yacht, it's actually quite handy to open these because they can kind of get a little bit more space to be able to clean the sides. It could be for that reason too. And here we are at the business end of the yacht. Just look at this anchor gear, the winches. It's a proper large super yacht this is. But again, some of the things you may not be aware of, this is a rescue tender. That's why the crane is there for quick launch if you really need to do that. And again, the crew were telling me that that is tested every single week. They test it, make sure it's working, because if there's an emergency, if they need it and they can't start the engine, what a disaster that would be. So they're constantly keeping it maintained and used. Other features here, from time to time I get comments on the YouTube channel asking why people have that foremast. Now on most yachts, the foremast is pretty ugly, to be honest. In my opinion, on ALFA NERO, it's beautiful, it's a work of art. And if you look very carefully, you'll see a little line there because the foremast actually folds down so that you can clean it more easily. But the reason that it has that is that yachts, I think it's over 50 meters, need to be visible at night as being larger yachts. You can imagine if you're navigating at night and you see a single light, you've no idea how big or how small the vessel is. If you see two lights, then you know that it's at least 50 meters in length and you're a little bit more cautious. Here we have the bosun's locker, which is great for storage and it's actually full of stuff, but there's also the remote control for the anchor winches and also for the crane kept in there. And here we have the emergency escape from the crew, and you'll be able to see later on when we look at the crew quarters exactly what that corresponds with on the other side. But the thing I really liked as well here was that the crew was telling me that these steps are for access to the owner's foredeck so they can clean that area and look after it without disturbing the owner or without having to always go through his or her cabin. And I looked at it and I said, that looks pretty difficult actually to get up there. He said, try it. And actually it couldn't be easier. On a yacht the size of ALFA NERO, the yacht is operational pretty much 24 hours a day, especially like today when they're at anchor. There's always somebody on duty, always somebody on watch. So at the moment, some of the crew are asleep, so I'm not going to actually disturb and talk with my loud Brummie accent through the crew quarters. But in total, we have 14 cabins for a crew of 26. Through there's like a crew office space that any one of the crew can use at any time they just want to sit down, do some emails or anything else. And most of the cabins, apart from the captain's cabin behind the bridge, are off of a long corridor. At the end of the corridor there are some steps, and at the top of the steps is the emergency exit that we saw at the bow. Through there we have that beautiful galley that you've already seen footage of, officer's mess, crew's mess, entrance to the engine room, which we'll look at later, a service elevator just here. I wanted to show you this because it's kind of cool, and you may not be aware that this exists on yachts. That's a dedicated shell door for provisioning. That leads directly outside the yacht, so the tender can come up with shopping and they can directly load it into the yacht here, or of course take the garbage away. And just the other side is a whole refrigerated garbage area. You can imagine with a crew of 26, maybe 12 guests on board, they might be at sea for, I don't know, 2 weeks. You imagine the amount of garbage generated. So that's all stored there until they can be in a location where the whole thing can be unloaded and thrown away in the appropriate manner. Very keen though to show you the next deck, and that is the tank deck. There's a lot to see on the tank deck. First of all, behind me here, there's a corridor with lots and lots of storage room, mostly dry storage. But this was kind of interesting. I asked what was behind this door, and it's actually nitrogen bottles which put the pressure that's needed for that high fog anti-incendiary system. It's a nice big room, plenty of room for maintenance there, again showing the importance that they attach to the safety of the yacht. Through here is simply the biggest laundrette on a yacht of this size that I have ever seen. 5 washers, 5 dryers, plenty of room for ironing. Remember, ALFA NERO is a highly successful charter yacht, and so I would imagine that area is being used pretty much non-stop when they're on charter. I liked this as well. When it said hazard, I thought I wouldn't be able to open the door, but they did allow me to see that this is actually the IT AV room. Feast your eyes on that wiring. This is what keeps the Wi-Fi, the audio system and such like alive and kicking. Now, when asked to see this area here, I think I opened a can of worms, because this is an office for the crew that I was told was for the safety officer. Then another crew member said, no, that's for the purser. Then I heard that the purser is actually now working closer to the bridge. But the point is, it's a really nice office space for the crew to be able to use, whether that is the safety officer, the purser, or whoever else. Behind here, there's storage for fancy dress, there's storage for table decorations, all those kind of extra assets that you need to have on the yacht to keep it fun is all kept away there. But just look at the freezing and refrigeration space. Refrigerated room, freezer room, another fridge room, another freezer room, and then this made me smile, guest fridge only. So that's where you're going to put that expensive bottles of wine, spirits, whatever else is there for the guests. And this, on the other hand, is for the crew. This is where they keep their refrigerated things. And obviously one of the crew has the responsibility of making sure that the drinks go from there to the crew fridges, so that they've always got something to be able to keep hydrated with. Just in front of me there's a lot of storage space, but also there's the bow thruster locker, which is important, of course, to be able to access the bow thruster. But as I was looking at this deck and making notes, at one point I suddenly thought, hang on, this is a tank deck. Where are the tanks? I've been on other yachts where they're either side of you, you don't have all of this extra space. But actually, the answer was beneath my feet, where all of these platforms lift and give you access to the tanks as well. It's just a different way of designing a yacht, and in this case it does give you all of this extra space as well. I do know though that a lot of people will be watching this video because they want to see the engine room. So let's go back to the crew mess where there's a door that accesses the engine room. Well, the engine room is everything you would hope for and more. I mentioned earlier that there's the escape exit from the engine room, and that's a ladder that's over there, which goes from the tank deck through this deck all the way up to the main deck. And it's so easy if there is one of those awful emergencies that the crew do need to get out very, very quickly. It couldn't be simpler for them to do that. I like the fact that we have all of these tools here and workbenches, another tool set and another workbench there. The exhausts are new, the boilers are new. Apart from the emergency generator that I mentioned earlier, there are three 332 kilowatt generators behind me in a separate room there as well. And the chief engineer was telling me that actually the entire yacht can be run with one generator. He said when things are really busy and everybody's in the pool and drying their hair and the air conditioning is blasting, okay, you might need to use the second generator. And if at the same time the yacht needs to maneuver, maybe the third generator, but there's ample power on board. On the topic of power, the engines are over 4,000 horsepower each. I'll put the exact amounts in the description. And they'll propel the yacht to about 21 knots at top speed, which a yacht of this size is pretty impressive. Has a 6,000 nautical mile range at 12 knots, and I'm pretty sure that the tank capacity is 289,000 litres. If it's not, it's thereabouts, and I'll put that as well in the description for this video so that you have a precise figure for the tank. It's a very, very impressive yacht, and even more impressive when you take a look at the engineer's control room. So the chief engineer and also the other engineer have been working here pretty much all the time that we've been filming. One of the things that I really liked about that room, which I've never seen on a yacht before, though I'm sure that it does exist on one of the yachts, is there's a helm station there, in the sense you can actually operate the entire vessel from here. And when I mentioned that to the crew, they said yes, and they sort of jokingly said, yeah, if Captain Jack Sparrow comes along and hijacks it, we can use this as a citadel. The crew will come down here and they can keep control of the yacht, which I know that was said kind of in jest, but it's also an important safety feature on board. Let's work our way aft though and take a look at the tenders and toys in the garage. Again, you have plenty of tools in here, which is really important when you consider the work that needs to be done servicing jet skis and tenders and outboard motors and such like. It's great that they've got a really good workstation to be able to work from. Plenty of space here. As you can see at the moment, this is how the owner wants to lay out the jet skis and the tenders. They're two 7.5 meter tenders, but if you wanted to, you could even have a longer tender by putting it in sideways through the yacht, but of course that would then limit the size of the other toys that you could have on board. Further aft, there's also access to all of the steering gear, which of course is very important, but it made me smile when I saw a fridge and an ice maker in this part of the yacht. And I said, what could that possibly be used for? Well, can you imagine how handy it is to have those tucked away there when a guest gets onto the chase boat, about to go to shore, and asks for more ice for their margarita? And while we're here, by the way, can I just say, is this not the most glorious design for the transom of a super yacht that you've ever seen? Nuvolari Lenard are the absolute gods of yacht design. I actually have a personal connection with ALFA NERO. Years ago when she was launched, I took clients to see her because they were thinking of buying a similar yacht. They actually did end up buying the similar yacht, but when they saw ALFA NERO, they fell in love and they wanted to buy her. So I arranged for a meeting with the then owner of the yacht and my clients, and the owner looked at them and he said, "I can't sell you ALFA NERO. If I did, my wife would kill me." And frankly, I think his wife would have been right. In hindsight, she has become such an iconic yacht. That Nuvolari Lenard design, that infinity pool on the aft deck, not to mention the quality of the interiors, the flow, the safety standards that are on board the vessel. She is, I would say, a significant piece in the jigsaw of yachting history. Now, my friend and colleague Richard.Higgins represents the yacht for sale, and we're putting his contact details on screen in just a moment. So if you're a qualified buyer and you want more details and you want to arrange a viewing of the yacht, you can do no better than contacting him. And if you're not a qualified buyer, which I'm guessing most viewers of this video won't be, then I do hope you've enjoyed this glimpse of an absolutely iconic and wonderful yacht.